No heat, no shelter, no mercy. When the temperature dropped to 40 below and train winds hit 60 below, most people would die in minutes. But during the Great Depression, over 2 million Americans had no choice but to ride these deadly winter freight trains. They weren't thrill seekers, they were desperate people who'd lost everything, and somehow they survived conditions that would kill most of us today, even with our fancy modern gear. This is how they did it. If you fall asleep to these, hit subscribe. Also, comment where you're listening from. Got people from New York to Berlin last time. Kinda cool thinking we're all drifting off together. Tonight's stop, the frigid freight trains of 1930s America during the Great Depression. Get comfortable. Seriously, fix your pillow. Pull that blanket up, because where we're going, you'll want to be warm. December 1932, Chicago. Your eyes snap open to complete darkness. For a second, you don't know where you are, then it hits you all at once, the violent shaking beneath you, the roar of steel wheels on track, and the cold. Dear God, the cold. Your body is curled into a tight ball on the wooden floor of a freight car. Every breath creates a cloud that instantly disappears into the darkness. Your fingers are already numb. Your toes, you can't even feel them anymore. Unlike your warm bed right now, this wooden floor pulls the heat right out of your body, stealing it degree by degree. Jack Morgan, lucky to exactly nobody, had been on this train for maybe 20 minutes, and he was already wondering if they'd find his frozen body when they unloaded in Omaha. First night riding in winter, kid? The voice comes from the corner of the boxcar. Jack nearly jumps out of his skin. Jesus, who's there? Jack's voice cracks, betraying both fear and the first stages of hypothermia. A match strikes, illuminating a weathered face, deep wrinkles, grey stubble, eyes that have seen too much. The man looks like he's been riding these rails for 100 years. Name's Pete. Some folks call me Newspaper Pete. The match dies. Darkness again. And you, my friend, have about 15 minutes before you're in serious trouble. I'm fine, Jack stutters, teeth chattering uncontrollably. Pete's laugh is like gravel in a tin can. Yeah, and I'm the King of England. Listen, kid, it's 20 below out there. With this train moving at 40 miles an hour, that's a wind chill of about -60. You know what happens at -60? Before Jack can answer, Pete continues. Your skin freezes in under 5 minutes. Your core temperature drops so fast you get confused, then sleepy. That's the dangerous part, the sleeping. You lie down for a nap, you don't wake up. And judging by how you're shivering, you're already halfway there. Jack tries to stand, but his legs are wooden, unresponsive. The cold has taken deeper hold than he realised. I can't feel my feet, he admits. Another match flares. Pete is suddenly beside him, moving with surprising agility for a man his age. Thought so. First rule of winter riding, kid. You don't just hop a train with regular clothes and hope for the best. That's suicide. Pete's eyes narrow as he looks Jack over. Stock market? Jack nods. It's all most people need to say these days. The crash of 29 had taken everything. His job at the bank, his apartment, his fiancée. 3 years later, there were still men jumping from buildings in New York. Well, today's your lucky day, kid. You met me instead of the Grim Reaper. Now shut up and do exactly what I tell you. Pete reaches into a large sack and pulls out what looks like trash. Newspapers, cloth strips, and what might once have been a canvas tarp. Take your coat off. Jack stares at him like he's insane. It's for freezing, Pete sighs. Kid, your cotton coat is worse than useless right now. It's soaked with your sweat from running to catch this train. Wet clothes kill in this weather. Now take it off before I have to drag your frozen corpse out of here in Iowa. Jack's fingers are too numb to work the buttons. Pete doesn't wait, just pulls a knife from his boot and slices them off in one quick motion. Hey, that was my only coat. and it was gonna be your death shroud. Now shut up and watch. I'm about to save your life with yesterday's Tribune. What happens next is like watching an artist at work. Pete's weathered hands move with practiced precision, unfolding newspapers and arranging them in specific patterns. The newspaper layer method, Pete explains, working quickly. Developed this myself over 4 winters on the rails. Newspapers got air pockets. Air pockets trap heat, but it's got to be done right. He starts with Jack's torso, wrapping sheets of newspaper around his chest and back in overlapping layers. Each sheet covers about 75% of the previous one, creating a seamless pattern. Gaps kill, Pete mutters as he works. One hole in your insulation and cold air gets in, warm air gets out. That's how you lose fingers and toes. The next 15 minutes are a masterclass in survival. Pete wraps Jack's entire body, torso, arms, legs, in layers of newspaper, securing each section with strips of cloth torn from what Jack realizes are old shirts and pants. Joints are tricky, Pete explains, paying special attention to Jack's elbows and knees. Movement creates tears, tears create gaps, gaps kill. He reinforces these areas with extra cloth and small pieces of canvas. How do you know all this? Jack asks, already feeling warmer despite being wrapped like a mummy in old Chicago Tribunes. Pete's eyes go distant for a moment. Trial and error, kid. Lots of error. Saw too many frozen bodies my first winter. Men who thought a coat and a bottle of whiskey would keep them alive. He shakes his head. Whiskey makes you feel warmer while it kills you faster, opens up your blood vessels, dumps all your heat out to your skin, then into the air. Jack is fascinated despite himself. You learn this in the army or something? Nah, School of Hard Knocks. Now hold still. Pete pulls out a large overcoat, at least 2 sizes too big for Jack. Charity bins special. Always go bigger in winter. Gotta fit all your newspaper layers underneath. The coat goes over Jack's newspaper-wrapped body. Then comes a canvas tarp, wrapped and secured with more cloth strips. Hand and foot protection next. Most important part, extremities freeze first. Jack's hands get wrapped in newspaper, then covered with wool socks, then enclosed in larger cloth bags that Pete tucks inside the coat sleeves. Your feet are the biggest concern right now, Pete says, examining Jack's boots. These are useless. Thin leather, probably wet inside from snow. Recipe for black toes. Black toes? Frostbite so bad they turn black and fall off. Seen it happen too many times. Jack feels sick. Pete doesn't seem to notice as he pulls off Jack's boots and socks in one motion. Jesus, your feet are already white. Another hour and you'd be in trouble. Pete works even faster now. He wraps each of Jack's feet in newspaper, covers them with 3 pairs of socks pulled from his seemingly bottomless sack, and then produces a pair of oversized boots. Won't win any fashion contests, but they'll keep you alive, stuffed with more newspaper for insulation. The final touch is head protection. Pete wraps Jack's head and neck with newspaper, leaving only small openings for his eyes and mouth. Over this goes a wool cap and a scarf wrapped in an intricate pattern. Up to 40% of your body heat escapes through an uncovered head, Pete explains. That's why all these young bucks die even with coats on. Forget their heads, they might as well be naked in a blizzard. When Pete is finished, Jack looks like a bizarre mummy, wrapped in papers and rags. But the difference is immediate and shocking. For the first time since boarding the train, he's not shivering. Better, right? Pete grins, revealing several missing teeth. Now the important part, this isn't set and forget. Gotta check your layers every 30 minutes. Paper tears. You sweat. It gets wet. Wet paper doesn't insulate. He hands Jack a small waterproof bag made from oiled cloth. Spare newspapers and cloth strips. Learn to do repairs in the dark and check your fingers and toes every 15 minutes. Loss of feeling is your warning sign. Can't feel your pinky? Add more insulation or move around. Jack flexes his fingers inside their cloth cocoons. I can feel them again. It's amazing. Not amazing, just science and experience. Pete settles back into his corner of the car. Warm enough to hear a story now? Jack nods eagerly. There's something about this old hobo that commands respect. He's clearly survived conditions that have killed others. Good. Because you need to understand what we're up against. Winter of 30, I was on a train like this one, headed through North Dakota. Temperature dropped to 40 below. Had a young guy with me, kinda like you. Name was Thomas, college boy who lost his scholarship when his daddy's business went bust. Pete's eyes go distant again, looking at something Jack can't see. He didn't listen. Thought his fancy store-bought gloves were better than my newspaper method. Found him in the morning. Couldn't even close his eyes to bury him. They were frozen open. Jack swallows hard. Yeah, that's the reality out here. The freight cars don't care if you live or die. The weather sure as hell doesn't. The railroad bulls would rather beat you half to death than let you ride. Out here, the only thing between you and a frozen grave is what you know and how well you use it. Pete strikes another match, lights a small stub of candle. So I'm going to teach you everything. Not because I'm a nice guy, I'm not, but because winter riders look out for each other. It's the code. Someone taught me, now I teach you. Someday you'll teach someone else. That's how we survive. The candle flickers, casting monstrous shadows across the boxcar walls. First lesson starts now. Take off your right mitten. Check your fingers. Tell me what you feel. Jack does as instructed. His fingers are pink again, with feeling returning in pins and needles. They hurt, actually. Good. Pain means blood flow. Dead tissue doesn't hurt. Now put that mitten back on before you lose what you've gained. For the next hour, as the train rumbles west through the frozen Illinois countryside, Pete teaches Jack the basics of the newspaper insulation system, the layers, the wrapping pattern, how to secure it, how to repair it, when to add more, when to adjust it. The whole system needs maintenance, Pete explains. Check every 30 minutes, replace wet or torn paper, re-secure loose wrappings. It's constant work, but that's the point. Keeps you moving, keeps blood flowing. Jack is a quick study, his banker's mind cataloguing the information methodically. How long have you been riding the rails? He asks during a pause in the lesson. Pete considers this. Since 29, was a carpenter before that, had a house in Tulsa, wife, 2 kids. He shrugs. Bank took it all. I worked at a bank, Jack admits quietly. Pete's laugh holds no humour. Ironic, ain't it? Don't worry, kid. I don't hold grudges. You were probably just a clerk, like most of the boys out here now. The real thieves are still eating steak in New York. A sudden lurch of the train sends them both sliding towards the boxcar door. Jack's heart leaps into his throat as he scrambles for purchase on the wooden floor. Rule 2 of winter riding, Pete says calmly, not even bothering to brace himself. Always know where you are in the car. Count paces from each wall. Know where the doors are. Know where the supports are. Your life might depend on grabbing something solid in the dark. As if to punctuate his point, the train takes a sharp curve and a blast of Arctic air knifes through the partially open boxcar door. Jack gasps as the cold finds the tiny gaps in his newspaper armour. Feel that? Pete asks. That's what kills. 1 minute you're fine in your layers. Next minute a door slides open wider or wind changes direction and suddenly you've got 60 below air hitting you. You've got maybe 2 minutes to react. What do I do if that happens? Jack asks, trying to keep the fear from his voice. Depends where it hits you. If it's your hands or feet, tuck them deeper into your coat. If it's your face, cover everything but your eyes with your scarf. If it's your whole body... Pete pauses. That's when you need shelter. And that's tomorrow's lesson. The train begins to slow, the rhythmic clacking of wheels changing pitch. "Water stop," Pete says, instantly alert. "Now you learn about bulls." Bulls? Railroad security. They find us, they beat us, arrest us, or just throw us off the moving train, especially in winter. They know it's a death sentence. Some of them enjoy that part. Jack feels a chill that has nothing to do with the temperature. What do we do? Pete is already gathering his few possessions. We move. Fast. Follow me and stay quiet. Remember rule 3 of winter riding. Never stay in one car too long. Bulls check them at stops. The train slows further, brakes squealing. Pete moves to the door, peers out into the darkness. We've got about 2 minutes before they reach this section. We need to move 3 cars up. Can you make that in your new outfit? Jack tests his movement. The newspaper layers restrict him somewhat, but not as badly as he'd feared. I can make it. Pete nods approvingly. Good. Now watch me first. When the train stops completely, I'm going to slide this door wider, jump down, and run along the side to the 4th car up. Count them carefully. I'll be waiting at the door. If you don't make it in 1 minute, I'm closing the door to stay warm. Understand? Jack nods, heart pounding. "One more thing," Pete says, his voice deadly serious. "If you see a bull, don't run. Drop to the ground and roll under the nearest car. Rather risk them not seeing you than getting caught in the open. They will beat you unconscious and leave you to freeze." The train jerks to a final stop. Steam hisses in the cold night air. "Now!" Pete slides the door open and jumps down into the snow. Jack follows, awkwardly clambering down from the boxcar. His feet sink into snow up to his ankles, but thanks to Pete's newspaper-stuffed boots, he doesn't immediately feel the cold. The night is clear and star-filled, brutally cold. Jack's breath clouds around him as he starts running alongside the train, counting cars as he goes. He can see Pete's shape ahead, moving with surprising speed and grace for an older man. 1 car, 2 cars, 3 cars. Jack's lungs are burning from the cold air, each breath feeling like swallowing broken glass. The newspaper layers make running awkward, and he nearly falls twice. Ahead, Pete has reached the 4th car and is already climbing up. He turns to help Jack, just as a shout rings out from behind. "Hey, stop, right there." Jack freezes, looking back to see a lantern bobbing in the darkness, moving toward them fast. "Bull!" Pete hisses. "Move your ass, kid!" Jack's survival instinct kicks in. He lunges forward, grabs Pete's outstretched hand, and scrambles up into the boxcar. Pete slides the door shut just as the lantern draws near, leaving only a tiny crack to peer through. "Don't make a sound," Pete whispers, his mouth right next to Jack's ear. They wait in absolute stillness, barely breathing. Outside, heavy footsteps crunch in the snow. A beam of light sweeps across the crack in the door. Jack's heart pounds so loudly he's certain it must be audible. The bull moves on, checking the next car. After what feels like an eternity, Pete relaxes slightly. He'll check the whole train, standard procedure at water stops, but we should be safe now. This boxcar is different from the last. It's a grain car with wooden walls that block more wind, but also more moonlight. The darkness is nearly absolute. "How do you see in here?" Jack whispers. "You don't. You feel." Pete's disembodied voice comes from somewhere to Jack's right. "Count steps. Remember where things are. Your eyes are useless most of the time out here." As they settle into their new temporary home, the train lurches and begins moving again. Jack feels a surge of relief. followed by exhaustion. The adrenaline of their escape, combined with the energy his body is using to stay warm, hits him all at once. "I'm so tired," he murmurs. "That's the cold talking," Pete says sharply. "Stay awake. Move your fingers and toes. Tell me about yourself." Not much to tell. Was a bank clerk in Chicago, had an apartment, a fiancée named Margaret, tickets to the Cubs. Jack trails off, the losses still too raw. "Keep talking," Pete insists. "Movement and conversation keep your blood flowing. Still got family. Parents in Milwaukee, too ashamed to go back. Dad warned me about the market. Should have listened. Pride's a luxury out here," Pete says simply. "Cold kills the proud just as fast as the humble." "What about you?" Jack asks, fighting to keep his eyes open. "You mentioned Tulsa. Had a good life. Carpenter by trade. Built houses all through the 20s boom. Had a wife, Alice. Pretty as a picture. 2 boys, Michael and Thomas. What happened to them?" Pete is quiet so long, Jack thinks he won't answer. Finally, "Alice took the boys to her sister's in California. Told me to come when I could. That was 3 years ago. You never went?" "Started that way. Headed west, but the rails have a way of becoming home. Met others like me, learned to survive, taught others, sent money when I could find work. Less shame in staying away than showing up broken." The rawness of Pete's admission hangs in the cold air between them. "Check your fingers and toes," Pete says abruptly, changing the subject. "Then I'll teach you about shelters, because this insulation system is just the beginning. Tomorrow you learn how to build a windbreak that can withstand 60-mile-per-hour gusts on a moving platform. After that, food and water systems that work when everything freezes solid." Jack flexes his fingers inside their newspaper and cloth wrappings. They're warm now, almost comfortable. "Oh, why are you helping me?" he asks suddenly. In the darkness, he hears Pete shifting position. "Told you, it's the code. Winter riders look out for each other." But Jack senses there's more. Is that the only reason? Pete is silent again, and when he speaks, his voice has lost its gruffness. "You remind me of someone. College boy who didn't listen. Thought he knew better than an old hobo." The train picks up speed, rushing westward through the frozen night. Jack waits, sensing Pete isn't finished. "My son, Thomas. Last letter from Alice said he left home to find me. That was last winter." Pete's voice is flat, emotionless. "Never found him, but I find boys like you instead. Maybe someone found him, taught him what I'm teaching you." The implications sink into Jack's mind like stones into a still pond. "I'm sorry," he says inadequately. "Don't be sorry. Be smart. Be alive in the morning." Pete's voice regains its edge. "Now, about those shelters." The train thundered through the night, steel wheels pounding a hypnotic rhythm on the frozen tracks. Inside the grain car, Pete was using the faint moonlight seeping through cracks to demonstrate the finer points of newspaper insulation. "Most folks who try this get the basic idea but miss the details," Pete explained, adjusting the layers around Jack's wrists. "See how I'm overlapping these edges? That's critical. Creates a seal that traps body heat." Jack nodded, fascinated despite his exhaustion. The cold that had nearly killed him an hour ago was now held at bay by nothing more than yesterday's news and some cloth strips. "But this is just emergency protection," Pete continued. "Gets you through the first night. Real winter riders need shelter systems, especially in cars like this where the wind finds every crack." Pete moved to the corner of the boxcar, his silhouette barely visible in the darkness. "This is where you want to be. Corner gives you 2 walls, cuts wind exposure in half." He pulled items from his pack, what looked like wooden slats, a coil of rope and canvas scraps. "Always collect materials during daylight stops. Railroad yards are full of useful junk if you know what to look for." "Won't the bulls catch you scavenging?" Jack asked. Pete's laugh was dry. Bulls patrol riding spots, not scrap piles. Look like you belong. Walk with purpose. Nobody looks twice. Jack watched as Pete began constructing something in the corner. Even in near darkness, his movements were precise, practiced. What are you building? Corner shelter, triangular windbreak, gives maximum protection with minimum materials. Pete worked methodically, positioning a horizontal support beam across the corner approximately 4 feet from the floor. He secured it with rope to create a frame that extended about 6 feet along each wall. Framework has to support covering materials while resisting wind pressure. On a moving train at 45 miles per hour, that's like a constant hurricane. Jack moved closer, intrigued. Where did you learn engineering like this? Told you I was a carpenter. Built houses for 15 years. Same principles apply, just smaller scale and moving at 50 miles per hour. Pete positioned vertical supports every 2 feet along the horizontal beam, creating a framework that looked surprisingly solid. Now for the covering system. This is where most folks mess up. They use a single layer, wind tears it apart in minutes. From his seemingly bottomless pack, Pete produced a folded canvas tarp, several blankets, and more newspapers. Multiple layers, outer layer deflects wind and moisture. He stretched the canvas over the framework, securing it with rope at multiple points. Has to be drum tight. Any flapping tears the material and creates noise. Noise attracts bulls. Next came the inner layer. Blankets positioned about 6 inches inside the canvas, creating an air gap. Air gap is crucial. Extra insulation. Same principle as the newspaper layers on your body. Pete then addressed the floor. Ever notice how cold seeps up through your feet when standing on ice? Same thing happens in a metal boxcar. Floor barrier is critical. He laid down cardboard, newspaper, and a thin blanket, extending about 2 feet beyond where they would sit. Thermal barrier prevents cold transfer from the metal floor, saves your ass, literally. Sit directly on metal at these temperatures and your backside freezes in minutes. Jack was impressed. The makeshift shelter looked surprisingly effective, creating a protected space in the corner of the otherwise brutally cold boxcar. What about getting in and out? Jack asked. Entrance system, Pete said, demonstrating an overlapping flap in the covering. Opens from inside, seals tight when closed. Position it away from the wind direction. Creates a vestibule area for removing snow and ice before entering the main shelter. Jack nodded, trying to memorize every detail. His life might depend on this knowledge soon. Ventilation control next, Pete continued. Carbon monoxide is a killer in enclosed shelters. Needs small adjustable openings near the top. He indicated small flaps that could be opened or closed, positioned to create air circulation without drafts. Can be quickly sealed if temperatures drop too low. The entire structure was anchored to solid parts of the boxcar with an intricate web of ropes. Anchor system distributes stress across the framework, has to flex with train movement while maintaining structural integrity. Pete stepped back, surveying his work. Quick release connections here and here. He pointed to specific knots. If bulls discover us, shelter can be dismantled in seconds. All materials arranged for rapid packing. The lesson continued, with Pete explaining how to monitor weather from inside the shelter. Small observation ports that could be opened to check conditions without exposing the entire shelter to wind and cold. Temperature monitoring is simple. Watch your breath. See ice forming on shelter walls. Adjust ventilation accordingly. When the shelter was complete, Pete gestured for Jack to enter. The difference was immediate and remarkable. Outside, the boxcar was a frozen metal tomb. Inside Pete's shelter, it was merely cold rather than lethal. "This is amazing," Jack said, genuine admiration in his voice. Pete shrugged off the compliment. Not amazing. Necessary. Now get some sleep. I'll take first watch. Watch for what? Bulls, weather changes, unexpected stops, sleep in shifts, standard procedure for winter riding. Jack wanted to protest, to offer to take the first watch, but exhaustion was quickly overwhelming him. The newspaper insulation combined with the shelter created enough warmth for his body to finally relax. 2-hour shifts, Pete said firmly. I'll wake you. Remember to check your extremities every time you wake up. Frostbite can happen during sleep without you feeling it. Jack nodded, already drifting. The last thing he heard before sleep claimed him was Pete's voice, surprisingly gentle. You did good tonight, kid. Most newcomers don't make it past the first hour. Jack woke to Pete's hand, gently shaking his shoulder. Your watch, kid. 2 hours till dawn. Jack blinked, disoriented. For a moment he was back in his Chicago apartment, waking for his shift at the bank. Then reality crashed back. The boxcar, the cold, his new life as a hobo. Check your fingers and toes, Pete reminded him. Jack did as instructed. Everything still had feeling, though his feet were colder than he'd like. Feet are a bit numb, he admitted. Pete nodded. Common after sleeping. Blood flow decreases. Move them around, get circulation going. Jack flexed his feet inside their newspaper wrappings, feeling pins and needles as warmth returned. While you do that, I'll teach you the maintenance routine, Pete said. Over the next 30 minutes, Pete demonstrated how to check and repair the newspaper insulation system. Certain areas, armpits, groin, behind the knees, created more moisture from sweat. These needed more frequent replacement. Wet newspaper is worse than no insulation, Pete explained. Conducts cold directly to your skin. He showed Jack how to replace sections without removing the entire system, working in small areas to maintain overall warmth. Your body is the furnace. These layers just keep the heat from escaping. Lose too many layers at once, furnace can't keep up. Jack was a quick study, his hands becoming more confident as he practiced the techniques. What's our plan? He asked as they finished the maintenance routine. Where's this train headed? West, Pete said simply. Probably Denver eventually, but we'll likely jump off before then. Why not ride it all the way? Longer rides mean more risks, more bulls, more weather changes, more chances for something to go wrong. Winter riding is about short hops between safe spots. Safe spots? Hobo jungles near rail yards, places to warm up, get real food, share information. Network of spots across the country, some better than others in winter. Jack nodded, filing away this new information. And where are we going? Junction City, Kansas. Good winter jungle there. Man named Boxcar Bill runs it. Best shelter builder on the rails. Makes my setups look amateur. Pete gestured for Jack to take position by the small observation port. Watch duty, look for lights, listen for changes in train rhythm. Wake me for any of these. Bulls with flashlights, trains slowing unexpectedly, sudden weather changes, or sunrise. With that, Pete curled up in the corner of their shelter and was asleep almost instantly, a skill Jack envied. Alone with his thoughts, Jack stared out the tiny port. The landscape was a moonlit blur of snow-covered fields and occasional distant farmhouses, each showing warm, golden windows that stirred painful memories of the life he'd lost. Margaret would be waking soon in the apartment they once shared, now occupied by her and her new fiancé, a doctor who hadn't lost everything in the crash. Jack didn't blame her. 3 years was a long time to wait for a man to rebuild his life, especially when that man kept sliding lower instead of recovering. The train began to slow. Jack tensed, remembering Pete's warnings. He watched intently for lights that would indicate bulls, but saw none. Still, the train continued decelerating. Pete, Jack whispered, gently shaking the older man's shoulder. Train's slowing. Don't see any bulls, though. Pete was instantly alert, no trace of sleepiness. Where are we? He asked, moving to the observation port. No idea. Just fields as far as I can see. Pete studied the terrain, then relaxed slightly. Water stop at Solomon Creek. No station, just a water tower. Bulls rarely check these stops, but stay alert. The train ground to a halt. In the sudden silence, Jack could hear water rushing, presumably into the locomotive's tanks. Quick lesson, Pete said softly. Water stops last about 15 minutes. Perfect time for shelter maintenance without the train movement making everything harder. He showed Jack how to tighten loose supports, adjust ventilation based on changing wind directions, and reinforce stress points that had weakened during travel. Every stop is an opportunity, Pete explained. Fix what needs fixing, never waste a stable platform. The stop also gave Pete a chance to evaluate their insulation layers in better light from the moonlight streaming through the larger cracks of the stationary boxcar. You're doing well with the newspaper method, but your elbow wrapping is loose. See how the papers shift when you move your arm? That's a cold spot waiting to happen. He demonstrated the correct technique, overlapping papers with tighter cloth bindings that still allowed movement. Balance is key. Too tight restricts blood flow, causes frostbite. Too loose lets cold air in, also causes frostbite. Both end with missing fingers and toes. Jack practiced under Pete's watchful eye until he got it right. You're a natural, Pete admitted grudgingly. Most folks take days to master this. Had a good teacher, Jack replied. A whistle blew from the locomotive. Departure signal, Pete said. Back to positions. The train lurched forward, beginning its westward journey once more. As they settled in, Jack's curiosity got the better of him. How'd you end up on the rails, Pete? Really? Pete was quiet so long Jack thought he wouldn't answer. Told you, lost everything in 29. There's more to it, Jack pressed gently. Nobody becomes an expert like you without a story. Pete sighed, a sound almost lost beneath the clacking of the train wheels. Was a master carpenter in Tulsa. Had my own business, built houses for oil money folks. Good life. Pete's voice was matter-of-fact, free of self-pity. When the crash hit, buildings stopped overnight, tried to hold on, took odd jobs, repair work. Wasn't enough. He shifted, the newspaper layers crinkling with his movement. Bank foreclosed in spring of 30. Alice took the boys to her sister's in Sacramento. Plan was I'd follow once I got back on my feet. But you didn't go, Jack prompted when Pete fell silent. Started that way, hopped my first freight that summer, thought I'd work my way west, job to job. What happened? First winter happened. Pete's voice turned grim. Was riding with 5 other men in a boxcar like this one. None of us knew what we were doing. Temperatures dropped to 30 below near Flagstaff. Jack waited, sensing Pete needed to tell this story at his own pace. Woke up, 2 men were already dead, frozen solid. 3rd was delirious, too far gone to save. 4th lost both feet to frostbite, died of infection weeks later. And the 5th man taught me everything he knew about winter survival. Old railroad worker named Henry. Said knowledge was the only currency that mattered in cold like that. Pete fell silent again, lost in memories. We rode together that whole winter. Henry showed me the newspaper method, the shelter systems, everything. By spring, I was helping him teach others. What happened to Henry? Bulls caught him near Omaha, beat him so bad his ribs punctured a lung, died 3 days later in a jungle outside the city. The brutality of life on the rails hung heavy in the cold air between them. After that, I just kept going, east in summer, south in winter, learning more techniques, teaching when I could, sending money to Alice when I found work. You never tried to reach California. Pete's laugh held no humour. Sent a letter once I had the newspaper method perfected. Told Alice I was coming. She wrote back that Thomas had left home to find me, said he was riding the rails, looking for his father. Jack understood now. That's why you're out here still, looking for him. Pete nodded. Been 3 years, ridden every major line, checked every jungle, asked every rider I meet. No sign of him? Stories, rumours. Boy fitting his description seen in Denver, in Seattle, in Chicago. Always just missed him, or wasn't him at all. The train took a sharp curve, and both men braced themselves against the shelter wall. So I keep riding, Pete continued once the train straightened out. Keep teaching. Figure if I can't find him, maybe I can make the rails safer for him, and for boys like you who don't know any better than to jump a freight in winter with nothing but a thin coat. Jack didn't know what to say. The man's dedication to finding his son was both heartbreaking and admirable. We'll find him, Jack said finally, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. Pete gave him a long look. Maybe. But first, we need to find Junction City and Boxcar Bill, because my newspaper trick and corner shelter are just the basics. Bill's the real master of winter survival. A thought occurred to Jack. Could your son have found Bill too, if Bill's so well known? Pete's eyes widened slightly, as if this possibility hadn't occurred to him. Been through Junction City 4 times in 3 years. Never thought to ask Bill specifically about Thomas. He shook his head, getting sloppy, too focused on moving, not enough on asking the right questions. We'll ask him together, Jack said firmly. Pete nodded, a new determination visible even in the dim light. First, you need to master this, Pete said, returning to the lesson, because Junction City is still 12 hours away, and this storm isn't done with us yet. Jack followed Pete's gaze to the observation port, where snowflakes had begun swirling more thickly in the moonlight. Blizzard coming, Pete said grimly, barometric pressures dropping. Can feel it in my bad knee. What does that mean for us? Means we're about to test everything I taught you under the worst possible conditions. Pete reached into his pack and pulled out more newspapers and cloth strips. Double layer everything. Reinforce all stress points. This is no drill, kid. Storm like this can kill even experienced riders if they get careless. They worked in focused silence, adding layers to their insulation systems and reinforcing the shelter. Pete was methodical, his decades of experience evident in every precise movement. Too many folks panic in blizzards, Pete explained as they worked. Waste energy, sweat through their layers, create moisture that freezes. Stay calm, work smart. Outside their shelter, the wind picked up, whistling through the boxcar's seams. Snow began to accumulate on the observation port. Close all but one ventilation opening, Pete instructed. Keep that one just barely open. Need airflow, but minimal heat loss. Jack followed Pete's instructions exactly, understanding now that these weren't just lessons, they were the difference between life and death. What about food? Jack asked suddenly, realizing he hadn't eaten since the previous morning. Winter riding rule, always carry emergency rations. Pete reached into an inner pocket and produced 2 hard biscuits and what looked like a strip of dried meat. Hardtack and jerky. Not fancy, but won't freeze solid like other foods. He broke each in half, giving Jack a portion that seemed meagre but was clearly valuable in these conditions. Eat slowly, small bites, let it soften in your mouth before swallowing, conserves water. Jack took a bite of the hardtack. It was like trying to eat a brick, but following Pete's advice, he let it soften before attempting to chew. Water is trickier, Pete continued. Canteens freeze in these temperatures. He showed Jack a small metal flask tucked against his body under several newspaper layers. Body heat keeps it liquid. Small sips only. When it runs low, we'll melt snow using body heat. As they ate their sparse meal, the storm intensified. The boxcar shuddered against powerful gusts, and the temperature dropped noticeably despite their shelter. "Storm's worse than I thought," Pete admitted, peering through the observation port at the white void outside. "Train might stop if the tracks drift over." "Is that bad?" "Depends where it stops. Middle of nowhere? Very bad. Near a town? Workable." Jack tried to keep his rising anxiety in check. He'd survived one night thanks to Pete's knowledge. Surely they could weather this storm too. "What's the worst winter situation you've faced?" Jack asked, partly to distract himself, partly to learn. Pete considered the question. "Winter of 31, Nebraska. Train got stranded in a blizzard like this one. 12 of us trapped in 3 boxcars. What happened?" "Temperature hit 35 below. Wind gusts to 60 miles per hour. No towns for miles. No rescue coming." Pete's eyes took on that distant look again, seeing something far away in time. Man named Eddie took charge, called himself Emergency Eddie, had been a medic in the Great War, organised us into a survival unit. Jack leaned forward, invested in the story, despite his fear of the howling storm outside. Eddie had us combine our individual shelters into one larger structure, positioned everyone in a circle with the weakest in the centre, created a rotation system so everyone got time in the warmest spots. Did it work? Pete nodded. 2 days we were stranded there. Temperature never rose above 20 below, but everyone survived. Eddie saved 12 lives with his system. Where is he now? Last I heard, riding the Union Pacific lines out of Omaha. Man's a legend among winter riders. The train began to slow again, the change in rhythm immediately noticeable. Pete frowned. Not a scheduled stop, could be drifts on the track. They waited in tense silence as the train ground to a complete halt. The sudden stillness was almost more unnerving than the movement had been. "Now we wait," Pete said calmly. "Could be minutes, could be hours." "What if it's days?" Jack asked, voicing his worst fear. "Then we implement Eddie's protocols." Pete's voice was steady, reassuring. "We have shelter, we have basic food and water, we have knowledge, 3 most important survival tools." Outside, the blizzard raged, snow and wind turning the world into a frozen hell. But inside their tiny shelter, constructed of scavenged materials and newspaper, they had created a space where survival was possible. "Get some rest," Pete suggested. "I'll wake you if anything changes." Jack nodded, suddenly exhausted again. The combination of stress, cold, and his body's efforts to stay warm was draining his energy. "Tomorrow," Pete said, as Jack settled into the corner of their shelter, "I'll teach you the full details of the insulation system. Every layer, every wrapping pattern, every securing technique. By the time we reach Junction City, you'll be able to build this in total darkness during a blizzard." "If we reach Junction City," Jack couldn't help adding. Pete's face was serious in the dim light. "We'll reach it. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not the next day, but we'll get there. Know why?" Jack shook his head. "Because giving up isn't an option out here. The minute you think you might not make it is the minute you start making fatal mistakes. On the winter rails, confidence isn't a luxury. It's a survival tool." With that wisdom echoing in his mind, Jack closed his eyes. The last thing he heard before drifting off was Pete's voice, reciting what sounded like a mantra. "The railroad don't care if you freeze. The weather don't care if you starve. The only thing between you and death is what you know and how well you can use it when everything goes wrong." Jack woke to silence. The constant rumble of wheels on tracks that had been his lullaby was gone, replaced by an eerie quiet broken only by the occasional moan of wind. "We stopped?" he asked, his voice thick with sleep. Pete nodded, peering through the observation port. Sometime in the night, snows drifted over the tracks ahead, crews probably waiting for a plough. How long will that take? Could be hours, could be days. Pete didn't sugarcoat it. Blizzards let up a bit, but we're not going anywhere soon. Jack felt a surge of panic that he fought to control. Stranded in the middle of nowhere in sub-zero temperatures wasn't how he'd planned to die. "Relax, kid," Pete said, reading his expression. "This ain't my first rodeo, or my first stranded train." He gestured to their shelter. "We've got protection from the elements, we've got some food and water, and most importantly, we know how to not die in this weather. That puts us ahead of most folks out there." Jack nodded, trying to find confidence in Pete's calm demeanour. "Now check your extremities," Pete instructed. "Fingers and toes, tell me what you feel." Jack wiggled his fingers inside their cloth coverings. They were cold but responsive. His toes were similarly chilled but not numb. He reported this to Pete, who nodded approvingly. "Good. Time for insulation maintenance." They spent the next hour carefully replacing damp newspaper with dry sheets from Pete's waterproof bag, section by section, to avoid exposing too much skin to the cold at once. "The train not moving actually helps," Pete explained as they worked. "Less wind penetration, stable platform for repairs. Take advantage of it." As Jack finished rewrapping his left arm, a thought occurred to him. What about the other people on this train? There must be other riders. Pete's expression darkened. "Almost certainly. And if they don't know what we know, they're in trouble." Jack didn't need to ask what kind of trouble. He'd nearly frozen to death himself before Pete found him. "We should help them," Jack said firmly. Pete studied him for a long moment. "Risky. Moving between cars in this weather exposes us. Plus, not all riders welcome help." "You helped me. That's different." "How?" Pete didn't have a ready answer for that. "Look," Jack pressed. "You said it yourself. Winter riders look out for each other. It's the code." Pete sighed, a cloud of vapour in the frigid air. "You're using my words against me. Not fair." But there was no real resentment in his voice. "All right. We'll check the adjacent cars, but we move smart, stay together, and if I say we turn back, we turn back. Deal?" Jack nodded. "Deal." Preparing to venture outside their shelter took another 20 minutes. Pete insisted they add extra insulation layers, paying special attention to faces and extremities. "Winds died down, but it's still deadly out there," Pete warned. "Cover everything but your eyes and keep moving. Standing still is how you die." When they were fully wrapped, looking like bizarre mummies in their newspaper armour, Pete carefully dismantled part of their shelter entrance. "Ready?" he asked. Jack nodded, trying to project more confidence than he felt. Pete slid the boxcar door open just enough for them to slip through. The blast of cold that hit them was shocking despite their preparations. Jack gasped, the air burning his lungs. "Keep your scarf over your mouth," Pete reminded him. "Breathe through the fabric to warm the air." They jumped down into snow that reached mid-calf. The world around them was a white wasteland. The train stretched in both directions, half buried in drifts, looking like a great black serpent frozen in the snow. The sky was a flat grey, promising more snow to come. "Next car first," Pete said, his voice muffled by his scarf. "Move quick but careful. Fall in this cold. Get snow inside your layers. You're in trouble." They trudged through the snow alongside the train, each step requiring effort. Jack could already feel the cold trying to penetrate his newspaper armour, probing for weaknesses. The next car was another boxcar, its door frozen shut. Pete produced a metal tool from inside his coat and worked it into the gap, leveraging the door open with a screech of protesting metal. "Hello," Pete called into the darkness. "Anybody riding?" Silence answered him. Empty, Pete concluded. Let's check the next one. They continued down the line, checking each car. The third car held a surprise. A family of 4 huddled together in a corner, shivering violently in clothes woefully inadequate for the conditions. Jesus, Pete muttered. Then, louder, "You folks all right?" The man looked up, his face pale with cold. "Who's asking?" "Name's Newspaper Pete. This is Jack. We're riders." "We're not looking for trouble," the man said warily. "Just trying to get to my brothers in Colorado. Lost our farm in Nebraska." Pete's voice softened. "Not here for trouble. Here to help. You and your family are in danger in this cold." The man's suspicion visibly warred with desperation. His wife and 2 small children, a boy and girl no older than 8, were clearly suffering. "What kind of help?" he finally asked. For the next hour, Pete taught the family his newspaper insulation technique using their own small supply supplemented with sheets from his waterproof bag. Jack helped, demonstrating what Pete had taught him the previous night. "Layers overlap like this," Jack explained to the woman as he showed her how to wrap her daughter's legs. "No gaps. Gaps let cold air in." Pete, meanwhile, was instructing the man on how to build a basic corner shelter using materials they had available. A tarp, some rope, and wooden slats pried from a broken crate. "Won't be pretty, but it'll cut the wind and trap some heat," Pete explained. The family's gratitude was palpable as their makeshift insulation and shelter began to take effect. Colour returned to the children's faces, and they stopped shivering quite so violently. "We can't thank you enough," the woman said, tears in her eyes. "We thought—" She didn't finish, but she didn't need to. "Winter riding has rules," Pete said simply. "First rule, knowledge gets shared. Someone taught me, I taught Jack, now we're teaching you. Someday, you'll teach someone else." The man nodded solemnly. "I won't forget this." "Make sure you don't," Pete replied, "because out here, what you know is the only thing standing between you and freezing to death." As they prepared to leave, the man introduced himself. "Name's Frank Miller. This is my wife Sarah, kids James and Rebecca." Pete hesitated, then asked, "You been riding long? Meet many other riders?" "About 2 months now. Met quite a few." "Why?" "I'm looking for someone. My son, name's Thomas, looks a bit like me but younger, dark hair, scar on his right cheek from a bicycle accident." Frank shook his head. "Sorry, haven't seen anyone matching that description." Pete nodded, disappointment evident despite his attempt to hide it. "If you do, tell him his father's looking for him, following the main lines. Junction City, Kansas is our next stop. We'll keep an eye out," Frank promised. Back outside, Pete and Jack continued their sweep of the train. 2 more cars yielded no riders, but in the 6th car they found an elderly man alone, nearly unconscious from hypothermia. "Bad case," Pete muttered, kneeling beside him. "Help me get his wet clothes off. They're worse than nothing at this point." Together, they stripped the old man of his sodden jacket and pants, replacing them with layer after layer of newspaper bound with cloth strips. "Got to warm his core first," Pete explained as they worked. "Extremities can wait. Heart needs to keep pumping." They wrapped the man in every dry blanket and piece of canvas they could find. Then Pete instructed Jack to lie next to him. Body heat, best way to warm someone in these conditions. Jack did as instructed, pressing himself against the shivering old man despite the discomfort and smell. Pete positioned himself on the other side, creating a human sandwich with the hypothermic man in the middle. "Had a doctor in the Great War who saved men this way," Pete explained. "Called it the hobo heating system. 3 men survived where one would die. After what seemed like an eternity, the old man's violent shivering subsided and his breathing grew steadier. His eyes fluttered open, confusion evident." "What? Who are you fellas?" he croaked. "Just passing through," Pete said. "You were in trouble. Cold got to you." Understanding dawned on the old man's weather-beaten face. Wouldn't be the first time. Name's Whiskey Joe. Been riding these rails since before you boys were born. You should know better than to wear wet clothes in this weather, Joe, Pete said. No judgment in his voice, just concern. Fell asleep too close to the door. Snow blew in when the storm hit. Joe shook his head. Rookie mistake. Getting old, I guess. Happens to all of us, Pete replied. You heading anywhere specific? Junction City. Got friends in the jungle there. Pete's eyebrows rose. That's where we're headed. Know a man called Boxcar Bill? Whiskey Joe grinned, revealing several missing teeth. Bill? Course I know Bill. Best damn shelter builder on the rails. He expecting you? No, but I'm hoping he might have information about my son. Been looking for him 3 years now. Joe's expression turned sympathetic. Lot of lost sons out here. What's his name? Thomas. Thomas Gardner. Joe shook his head. Don't recall that name, but my memory ain't what it used to be. If anyone would know, it'd be Bill. Man hears everything. A whistle sounded from the front of the train. 3 short blasts. Moving soon, Pete translated. Plough must have cleared the tracks ahead. You boys heading back to your car? Joe asked. Pete glanced at Jack, a silent question passing between them. Actually, Jack said, think we'll ride with you for a while. Make sure Victorian fashion was so extreme that women's corsets could reduce their waist size by up to 10 inches. The average woman's natural waist was 27 to 29 inches, but society celebrated the ideal 18-inch waist, all while doctors raised concerns about breathing difficulties and circulation problems. If you enjoy these stories, hit subscribe. Also, drop your location in the comments. I'm always curious where everyone's listening from. We're heading to Victorian England in a minute. First though, get comfortable. Seriously, take a second, adjust whatever needs adjusting. You're not going to want to move once we start. The pressure around your ribs is the first thing you notice. Even before opening your eyes, you can feel it. Like a giant hand squeezing your torso. Welcome to morning as a Victorian woman in 1870. You blink awake in a modest bedroom, lying on a horsehair mattress that crinkles when you shift. The room is cold, damn cold actually. The coal fire died hours ago and frost patterns decorate the inside of your window panes. Unlike your cozy blanket right now, the thin wool coverings barely trap any heat. Time to rise, ma'am. Your lady's maid, Agnes, has entered silently. She's already been up for hours, lighting fires, preparing your clothes, heating water. She looks exhausted, but that's not your concern right now. You have your own battle ahead. Is it really necessary today, you ask? Eyeing the contraption Agnes is laying out on the dressing table. I'm only visiting Mother. Agnes gives you that look. The one that says, we have this conversation every morning. Your mother would be the first to notice if you weren't properly dressed, ma'am, she replies diplomatically. She's right. Your mother would definitely notice and comment, and then tell everyone else she knows. The thought makes your stomach clench. The corset lies there like an instrument of torture, which honestly it basically is. Whalebone and steel designed to force your body into an impossible shape. Last week you heard about a woman whose corset was so tight that when she died they found her ribs had grown around it. Like a tree growing around a fence. Your body literally reshaping itself to accommodate this cage. Shall we begin? Agnes asks. First comes the chemise, a thin cotton undergarment that serves as a barrier between your skin and the corset. Then cotton drawers tied at the waist. Already you're warmer. Silver linings, I guess. Agnes holds the corset up against your torso. It's a well-made piece, custom fitted last year when you still had dreams of achieving an 18-inch waist. You're hovering around 20 inches now, which your husband has deemed acceptable. How generous of him. Deep breath, ma'am, Agnes warns. You inhale as much as possible, knowing that soon breathing deeply won't be an option. Agnes wraps the corset around your torso and begins the lacing process. The first few tugs are manageable, just a gentle pressure, but as Agnes works her way down, each pull becomes more restrictive. Your ribs compress, your lungs can't fully expand, your internal organs are literally shifting position. A bit tighter, ma'am. The blue dress needs a smaller waist. Just a bit more, you gasp. Agnes braces her foot against the bedpost for leverage, pulling the laces with all her strength. You grip the bedpost, knuckles white. Jesus, you mutter under your breath. How is this fashion? Language, ma'am, Agnes reminds you, but there's sympathy in her voice. She's not immune. She wears a corset too, though a cheaper, less restrictive version. The pressure required for your waist would prevent her from completing her physically demanding work. With a final tug, Agnes ties off the laces. You try to breathe and find you can only take shallow sips of air. Your lower ribs are compressed almost to meeting in the middle. There now. Beautiful, Agnes says, steering you toward the mirror. The transformation is undeniable. Your waist is impossibly small, creating that coveted hourglass figure. But at what cost? You already feel lightheaded, and you haven't even gone downstairs yet. Dr. Harrison's warning echoes in your mind. These contraptions are slowly killing you, ladies, he'd said during your last visit for female troubles. Your mother had been scandalized, insisting he was being dramatic. But when he showed you those medical drawings, the way organs get crushed and displaced, you couldn't unsee it. The women in your circle dismiss such warnings. Men have always tried to control what we wear, your friend Elizabeth had said last week. First they want us in corsets, then they claim to want us out of them for our health. Make up your minds, gentlemen. You had laughed along, but privately wondered if maybe the doctors had a point. Your monthly courses had become irregular and painful since tightening your corset to please your husband, and that fainting spell at the Hendersons' dinner party last month, definitely from lack of oxygen. Now, for the petticoats, Agnes announces, holding up what looks like enough fabric to sail a small ship. Layer by layer, Agnes builds your silhouette. First, the cotton petticoat, then two more made of heavier material. Already, you're carrying several pounds of fabric, all hanging from your compressed waist. Your lower back begins to ache in protest. I was reading about this American woman, you tell Agnes as she works. Amelia Bloomer. She wears trousers under a shorter skirt. Can you imagine? Agnes looks scandalized. Trousers on a lady. What would the neighbours say? That's exactly what my husband said, you sigh. But think how much easier it would be to move, to breathe, to exist. Easier isn't always proper, ma'am, Agnes says diplomatically, though you can see a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. Next comes your bustle, a metal cage that attaches at your lower back, creating that fashionable posterior shelf that men supposedly find attractive. It adds another pound of weight and makes sitting a strategic challenge. You'll spend the day perching on the edges of chairs or standing until your feet throb. The blue dress goes on last, a beautiful creation of silk and lace with 57 tiny buttons down the back that poor Agnes must fasten one by one. By the time she's done, your back is ramrod straight, your waist is cinched to painful proportions, and your lungs can only expand by about half their capacity. There, Agnes says with satisfaction, you look like a proper lady. You study your reflection. Yes, you've achieved the ideal Victorian silhouette. Tiny waist, ample bosom, wide hips. The dress is beautiful, but already spots dance before your eyes from shallow breathing. Your ribs send shooting pains with every movement. And you know that by evening the flesh under your corset will be raw and chafed, possibly bleeding in spots. Is beauty worth this? Agnes brings your jewellery next, a cameo brooch from your husband, earrings from your father, and a delicate gold chain. These small personal touches are the only parts of your appearance truly under your control. Oh, I almost forgot, Agnes says, retrieving a small bottle from your dressing table. Your mother sent this over. She says all the ladies are using it for a youthful complexion. You examine the bottle. Dr. Campbell's Arsenic Complexion Wafers. Arsenic? You ask, alarmed. Isn't that poison? In large doses, ma'am, but these are perfectly safe in small amounts. The lady down the street has been taking them for months and her skin is like porcelain. You've heard the rumours, though. The woman 3 doors down who took similar wafers and ended up with tremors in her hands. The socialite who died suddenly after using arsenic powders for years. I think I'll pass for today, you say, setting the bottle aside. Agnes looks worried. Your mother will ask if you've tried them. Then let her ask. This small rebellion feels significant. You can't escape the corset. Not yet, anyway, but you can refuse to literally poison yourself for beauty. As Agnes styles your hair, you gaze out the window at the street below. A delivery boy races past on a bicycle, moving freely, breathing deeply. You feel a stab of envy so intense it takes you by surprise. Do you ever wonder what it would be like, you ask Agnes suddenly, to move through the world without all this? Agnes pauses, hairpin in hand. Sometimes, ma'am, when I see my brother run across a field or climb a tree, she lowers her voice. And sometimes at night, I loosen my corset when no one's looking, just to remember what it feels like to take a real breath. This confession creates an unexpected moment of solidarity between you, 2 women separated by class but united by the same physical restrictions. Maybe someday, you say, though you don't finish the thought. Agnes adds the final touches to your hair, a complex arrangement of curls and twists that you couldn't possibly reproduce on your own. Another way you're dependent on others just to present yourself acceptably to society. Ready to go downstairs, ma'am? You nod, though ready isn't quite the word. You're armoured, packaged, presented, but definitely not comfortable or free. You stand carefully, feeling the weight of the fabrics, the squeeze of the corset, the pinch of 2 small shoes. The day stretches before you, a series of restrictive spaces, limited movements, shallow breaths, and careful social performances. And tomorrow, you'll do it all again. As you make your way toward the door, you catch sight of a pamphlet on your writing desk, something your husband's progressive cousin had slipped to you at last week's dinner party. The Rational Dress Society, the headline reads. You'd hidden it quickly, but the ideas inside have been haunting you. Could women really dress differently? Could you someday walk through the world without feeling like your body is in a cage? Agnes follows your gaze and quickly adjusts your skirt, drawing your attention away from the forbidden literature. Best not to dwell on such things, ma'am, she says quietly. Some battles can't be won in a day. You take as deep a breath as your corset allows and prepare to descend the stairs. One careful step at a time, as befits a proper Victorian lady. The weight of expectations feels heavier than all your clothing combined. Breakfast is a painful affair, not the food itself. Cook has prepared a lovely spread of toast, eggs and kippers, but the actual process of eating while corseted is miserable. Your compressed stomach can only handle small bites, and even those sit uncomfortably. Your husband barely notices your discomfort. He's hidden behind his newspaper, occasionally making comments about politics or business that require no real response from you. This is probably a blessing. At least you don't have to make conversation while struggling to breathe. "I'll be at the club until late," he announces, folding his paper. "The Hendersons are coming for dinner tomorrow, so make sure you look presentable." The way his eyes flicker to your face makes his meaning clear. The Hendersons are influential, and Mrs. Henderson is known for her flawless complexion and fashionable appearance. You'll need to do better than just a corset tomorrow. After he leaves, you return to your dressing room where Agnes has laid out your beauty regimen. The array of bottles, pots, and tools looks more like a chemist's laboratory than cosmetics. "Shall we begin with the face treatments, Mum?" Agnes asks. You nod, settling onto the stool before your vanity mirror. The woman who stares back at you is pale, not the fashionable porcelain pallor, but the sickly pallor of someone who rarely sees the sun. Dark circles rim your eyes from another night of uncomfortable sleep in your corset. Mrs. Henderson uses that new face cream, you muse. The one with... what is it called? "Ammonia, ma'am," Agnes says, reaching for a white jar. "Said to remove impurities from the skin." She unscrews the lid, and the sharp, acrid smell makes your eyes water immediately. Inside is a white paste that supposedly bleaches the skin to the desired marble-like perfection. "Are you sure this is safe?" you ask, wrinkling your nose. Agnes hesitates. "Lady Caroline swears by it, though her lady's maid told me in confidence that it burned her skin something awful the first week. And the alternative is..." Agnes gestures to the array of other options, creams containing lead, mercury, or arsenic, all guaranteed to create that coveted deathly pallor that signifies you've never had to work outside in the sun. "You know," Agnes says quietly, "my grandmother used to make a face cream from beeswax and rose water. Didn't turn you white as a ghost, but it kept her skin nice into old age." You consider this. A natural option sounds appealing, but would it be enough? Society doesn't want nice skin. It wants unnaturally pale, artificially perfect skin, the kind that shows you can afford to poison yourself slowly in the name of beauty. "Let's try the ammonia cream," you decide, mentally preparing for the burn, but not too much. Agnes nods and dips her fingers into the jar, then begins applying the cream to your face in light circular motions. The burning sensation is immediate, a chemical fire across your skin. Your eyes water and your nose runs, but you force yourself to remain still. "It's working, Ma'am," Agnes says encouragingly. "Your skin is already turning whiter." "Probably because all the blood is retreating in terror," you mutter, which makes Agnes stifle a laugh. Next comes the powder, a fine white dust that Agnes applies with a large puff. It contains bismuth, a heavy metal that gives that desired matte finish. You try not to think about how it's slowly absorbing into your skin day after day, year after year. "Now for your eyes, ma'am?" Agnes reaches for a small dropper bottle containing a clear liquid. "Is that the belladonna?" "Yes, ma'am, for brightening the eyes." You've used it before, drops made from deadly nightshade that dilate the pupils dramatically, creating a doe-eyed, luminous look that men find attractive. The side effects include blurred vision, sensitivity to light, and if used too frequently, blindness. But what's a little vision damage in the pursuit of beauty? "Just one drop in each eye," you instruct, tilting your head back. Agnes carefully administers the drops. The familiar burning sensation follows, then the strange feeling of your pupils expanding beyond their natural size, letting in too much light. The world becomes slightly fuzzy around the edges. "Beautiful," Agnes murmurs, "like starlit pools." You blink rapidly, trying to clear your vision. This temporary beauty will make reading impossible for at least 3 hours, and you'll need to avoid bright windows. A small price to pay, you're told. Remember what happened to Lady Pembroke? You ask Agnes as she prepares the rouge pot. They say she went completely blind from belladonna drops. I heard it was her own fault, Agnes replies, repeating the gossip of the servants' quarters, using them 3 times a day instead of once. You wonder what drove Lady Pembroke to such extremes. Was her husband particularly demanding? Did she feel the constant pressure to be more beautiful, more perfect, more doll-like for the male gaze? Or was she simply caught in the same beauty trap as all of you, competing in an endless game where the rules were written by men and the players were all women? Now for your lips, ma'am. Agnes takes a small brush and dips it into a pot of red salve. This, at least, is relatively harmless, just beeswax tinted with carmine from crushed beetles. The irony isn't lost on you. The one beauty product that won't slowly poison you is made from insects. Agnes, you say suddenly as she applies the tint to your lips. Do you think our daughters will still be doing all this? 20, 30 years from now? Agnes pauses, brush in hand. Hard to say, ma'am. My mother wore a corset even tighter than yours. Said in her day they'd lace until someone fainted, then loosen it just enough to wake them up. That's horrible. That was fashion, Agnes shrugs. Though I did hear about some ladies starting a society against it all. The Rational something or other. Rational Dress Society, you supply, thinking of the pamphlet hidden in your desk drawer. Agnes nods. My cousin works for a lady who's joined it. Says they want women in shorter skirts and looser bodices. Some even wear trousers underneath like men. The idea is both scandalous and thrilling. To move freely, to breathe fully, to exist in your body rather than being packaged in it. What do you think would happen, you ask, genuinely curious, if I just didn't wear a corset one day? Agnes looks genuinely alarmed. Oh, ma'am, you couldn't. Your husband would notice straight away. And if you went out, why, everyone would talk. But what if all women decided at once they couldn't ostracize all of us? I suppose not, ma'am, but who'd be the first? That's the problem, isn't it? Someone has to go first. Someone has to brave the ridicule, the social suicide of defying convention. And despite your private rebellious thoughts, you know it won't be you. Not today, anyway. Now for your hair, ma'am, Agnes says, changing the subject. She picks up the curling tongs that have been heating by the fire. They're red hot, designed to create the tight ringlets currently in fashion. Your scalp still bears small scars from previous burns. An occupational hazard of Victorian hairstyling. Agnes is skilled, but accidents happen, especially when working with tools literally designed to burn. Have you heard about that new permanent waving machine? Agnes asks as she carefully wraps a strand of your hair around the hot metal. They say it can curl your hair for weeks, not just days. The Nestler machine? I read about it. Didn't the inventor burn his wife's hair off twice while perfecting it? That's what I heard, Agnes confirms with a slight smile. Must have been quite devoted to him to let him try a third time. You share a laugh at this, a rare moment of feminine solidarity across class lines. Both of you understand the painful absurdity of what women endure. The smell of singed hair fills the room as Agnes continues her work. It's not burning, just cooking slightly. Another unpleasant aspect of beauty that everyone pretends not to notice. Your friend Elizabeth visited Paris last season and returned with tales of women who coloured their hair with dyes containing lead, mercury and silver nitrate. Some had developed strange symptoms, trembling hands, headaches, even partial paralysis, but their hair was fashionably coloured, so many considered it a reasonable trade. Did you see Mrs. Whitmore at the Johnsons' dinner? Agnes asks as she works. Her new lady's maid used to work for an actress did her hair with something special. It did look unusually red, you recall. Very striking. Apparently it's henna mixed with something else. Can't recall the name, but her maid said it's turning Mrs. Whitmore's hair brittle as straw. Coming out in handfuls it is. You wince, not just from the hot curling tongs near your ear. Is there anything we do that doesn't eventually harm us? Agnes considers this seriously. Sleep, perhaps, though my mother always slept in papillotes to curl her hair and woke with awful headaches from the tight wrapping, with your hair finally arranged in an elaborate style that will require you to sleep sitting up to preserve it. Agnes steps back to admire her work. Perfect, ma'am. Now for the finishing touch. From a velvet-lined box, she removes your pearl earrings, heavy pendants that will drag at your earlobes all day, eventually stretching the holes until they tear, as happened to your grandmother. Beauty is pain, after all. I don't think I need the earrings today, you decide. Just visiting mother, after all. Agnes looks surprised but pleased. These small rebellions feel significant, even if they're tiny in the grand scheme of things. As Agnes helps you rise, you catch sight of yourself in the full-length mirror. The transformation is complete. You've gone from a natural human woman to a Victorian ideal. Wasp-waisted, pale-skinned, bright-eyed, with elaborate curls and artificially reddened lips. You look beautiful by the standards of your time. You also look like you're slowly killing yourself, which, in a way, you are. The door opens and your lady's maid from the neighbouring estate enters, looking distraught. Begging your pardon, ma'am, but could Agnes come quick? It's Lady Russell. She's collapsed again. Agnes looks to you for permission, which you quickly grant. What happened? You ask the maid. Her corset, ma'am. Tightened it more than usual for the garden party. Couldn't breathe proper, and when she tried to sit for tea, she just folded. Doctor's been called, but the master is in a state. You exchange a look with Agnes. This happens more often than anyone acknowledges. Women fainting from oxygen deprivation, their compressed organs simply giving up. Usually they're loosened, revived and sent right back to the same practices that caused the problem. Tell Lady Russell I'll call tomorrow, you tell the maid. And Agnes, perhaps bring her that pamphlet from my desk. Agnes's eyes widen slightly, but she nods. A small act of rebellion passing forbidden literature, but maybe, just maybe, if enough women start questioning these practices. After Agnes leaves, you stand alone in your dressing room, surrounded by bottles of poisons disguised as beauty aids. Your skin tingles from the ammonia cream. Your eyes struggle to focus from the belladonna. Your ribs ache from the corset. Your scalp stings from the hot tongs. All of this suffering for beauty, all of this danger for social acceptance. You think of your mother enduring these same rituals for 30 years. You think of Lady Russell, unconscious from a too-tight corset. You think of the pamphlet now making its way to another potential convert to rational dress. Change comes slowly, then all at once. Perhaps you're witnessing the slow part, the quiet questioning, the private rebellions, the whispered conversations between women about whether there might be another way to exist in the world. You take a final look in the mirror. Today, you'll play by society's rules. You'll visit your mother corseted, painted and proper, but you've refused the arsenic wafers. You've skipped the heavy earrings. You've passed along dangerous literature. Small acts of rebellion, but they have to start somewhere. With careful, measured steps, the only kind possible in your restrictive clothing, you make your way downstairs to begin your day, wondering if your daughter or granddaughter might someday walk freely, breathe deeply, and exist in her body as nature intended. It seems an impossible dream, but then again, all change begins as an impossible dream. The carriage ride to your mother's home is uncomfortable. Each bump in the road jars your compressed organs, sending small shocks of pain through your abdomen. You try to sit perfectly straight, as slouching in a corset creates its own special kind of torture, the rigid boning digging into your flesh like knives. Your mother's home appears around the corner, a respectable townhouse with lace curtains visible through gleaming windows, the perfect Victorian home designed to showcase the perfect Victorian wife who maintains it. Your mother greets you in the parlour, her own waist impossibly tiny for a woman in her 50s. You wonder how many decades her organs have been compressed, reshaped, rearranged within her body. Has she ever taken a full breath? You can't remember ever seeing it. "Darling," she says, kissing your cheek, "you look acceptable, though your complexion could use some help. Have you tried those arsenic wafers I sent over?" "Not yet, mother," you reply. "I've been feeling a bit unwell." She frowns. All the more reason to use them. Nothing enhances a woman's beauty like a touch of illness. Men adore the delicate look. She leans closer. Mrs. Carrington has been taking them for months and received 3 marriage proposals for her daughters already this season. You don't mention that Mrs. Carrington's youngest daughter confided in you that she's been coughing blood recently. Beauty has its price, and in Victorian England that price is often paid in health. "I've come for your advice, actually," you say, changing the subject. "The Hendersons are coming to dinner tomorrow, and you know how particular they are." Your mother brightens immediately. If there's one thing she excels at, it's managing a proper Victorian household. "You must impress them," she says firmly. "A woman is judged by her home as much as her appearance. It reflects your capabilities as a wife." And so begins a lengthy lecture on household management, the backbone of a Victorian woman's existence. While men run the outside world, women are expected to create perfect domestic sanctuaries. This is no small task, even with servants to do the physical labour. Have, cook, prepare something impressive, but not ostentatious, your mother advises. You don't want to appear as if you're trying too hard. Perhaps the duck with cherry sauce, followed by a Charlotte Russe. You nod, mentally adding these items to your list. Maintaining the perfect balance is exhausting, impressive enough to show your husband's prosperity, but not so lavish that you appear nouveau riche or wasteful. And make sure the parlour is immaculate, she continues. Mrs. Henderson has been known to run her finger along mantelpieces when she thinks no one is looking. You suppress a sigh. "I'll speak to the housekeeper." Do more than speak, darling. Inspect everything yourself. A proper mistress knows every inch of her domain. This is the expectation, that even with a full staff of servants, you will personally oversee every detail. Your role is not to do the work, but to ensure it's done perfectly. An impossible standard that keeps you constantly vigilant, constantly anxious. Remember, your mother says, the angel of the house must create a sanctuary for her husband away from the harshness of the business world. The angel of the house, that Victorian ideal of womanhood that's been drilled into you since childhood. The perfect wife who maintains a perfect home, all while appearing effortlessly beautiful, unfailingly pleasant, and eternally selfless. A domestic goddess who exists only to make others comfortable while ignoring her own discomfort. "And how is Henry?" your mother asks, referring to your husband. "Working hard, I assume." "Very hard," you reply automatically. "He's at his club this evening. Business matters." Your mother nods approvingly. As it should be, a man needs his freedom, and a wise wife never questions his absences. You think of Henry's late nights, the perfume that sometimes clings to his clothes, the lipstick stain you once found on his handkerchief. Your mother's generation would say it's simply a man's nature, something to be ignored in exchange for financial security and social standing. Now, about the dinner service, your mother continues, launching into detailed instructions about silver placement and napkin folding. By the time you leave your mother's home, your head is spinning with instructions and reminders. The weight of expectations feels even heavier than your corset and layers of clothing. Back at your own house, you find the housekeeper, Mrs. Peters, waiting for you with a worried expression. "Begging your pardon, ma'am, but we've had an issue with the kitchen range. Cook says it's smoking something terrible." And so begins the real work of being the Victorian angel of the house. For the next several hours, you move from crisis to crisis. The kitchen range needs cleaning, but the chimney sweep can't come until Thursday. You'll need to find an emergency replacement before the Hendersons arrive. The parlour curtains have a small stain that everyone missed. They'll need to be taken down and cleaned immediately. The fishmonger delivered inferior quality salmon. You'll have to send someone to the market first thing tomorrow for replacements. One of the housemaids is showing signs of consumption. Do you dismiss her immediately to protect the household, or allow her to stay until she finds new employment? Each decision falls to you, not the physical labour, you have servants for that, but the mental load of managing this domestic machine, and all while looking perfectly composed, never letting anyone see you sweat beneath your layers of proper clothing. "The table linens, ma'am," Mrs. Peters says, bringing you a selection. "Which would you prefer for tomorrow's dinner?" You examine each option carefully. This seemingly small decision could impact how the Hendersons perceive your entire household. Too ornate suggests trying to impress. Too simple implies carelessness. This one, you decide, selecting a cream damask with subtle embroidery. "And the silver candlesticks, I think, but not the new ones. We don't want to appear boastful." Mrs. Peters nods approvingly. She understands the complex social calculations as well as you do. "And shall I have the parlour fire lit an hour before they arrive? Mrs. Henderson is known to feel the cold." "Yes, and make sure the drawing room is slightly warmer than the dining room. We want them comfortable throughout the evening." These minutiae, fire temperatures, linen choices, silver selections, consume your day. Your corseted body moves from room to room, inspecting, directing, ensuring that every detail is perfect. This is your domain, your purpose, your prison. You pause in the drawing room, suddenly light-headed. The combination of restricted breathing and constant movement is taking its toll. Spots dance before your eyes, and you reach for a chair. "Ma'am?" Mrs. Peters appears in the doorway, concerned. "Are you unwell?" "Just a moment of weakness," you assure her, though your vision is still blurry. "Perhaps I'll rest before dinner." But there's no time for rest. The household accounts need reviewing, tomorrow's menu must be finalised, and you need to write several social correspondence letters before evening. This is the hidden labour of Victorian womanhood, the constant mental and emotional work behind the facade of effortless grace. Men may mock women's leisure, but they don't see the complex machinery you maintain. In your private study, you review the household accounts with meticulous care. Every penny must be accounted for, every expenditure justified. Your husband provides an allowance for household expenses, and you're expected to work miracles with it. The butcher has raised his prices again. The coal delivery was short by nearly a bucket. One of the kitchen maids broke a teacup from the good service. Each entry requires a decision. A solution. You're essentially running a small business, but without the recognition or authority that would come with a formal business role. Instead, your success is measured by invisibility, the smooth running of a household where problems are solved before anyone notices them. "Ma'am?" Your lady's maid has returned from Lady Russell's. I delivered that pamphlet as you asked. And how is Lady Russell? Recovered, ma'am, but shaken. The doctor advised her to loosen her stays, but her husband, Agnes pauses, then finishes diplomatically, prefers her current silhouette. You understand the unspoken reality. Lady Russell will continue to risk her health because her husband values her appearance over her well-being. It's a bargain most of you have made. She was most interested in the pamphlet, Agnes adds quietly. Asked if I might bring more information next time I visit. A small victory, another potential ally in the quiet rebellion. You nod, pleased, then return to your accounts. By the time evening arrives, you've solved a dozen household crises, reviewed the entire menu for tomorrow's dinner, written 5 social letters, organised the flower arrangements, and inspected every room the Hendersons might possibly enter. All this while restricted by your corset, dress, and social expectations of proper feminine behaviour. You haven't raised your voice, shown frustration, or admitted to any physical discomfort. The perfect angel of the house, your husband returns home as you're taking a rare moment of rest in the drawing room. The house looks acceptable, he comments, which from him is high praise. I trust everything is prepared for tomorrow? Yes, of course, you reply, not mentioning the hours of work, the dozen decisions, the physical toll. Good. The Hendersons are important connections. Mr. Henderson could be very useful to my business ventures. And there it is, the real purpose of your domestic labour. Not your comfort, not even really his, but the advancement of his social and business standing. Your home is a stage set for his ambitions, and you are both the stage manager and a principal actor. Oh, and Margaret, he adds casually, wear the blue silk tomorrow. It gives you a more youthful appearance. You nod, though the blue silk requires an even tighter corset. You'll need to start lacing earlier to acclimate your body to the additional restriction. Perhaps you'll skip breakfast entirely. It's impossible to eat in that particular corset anyway. I thought I might invite Lady Russell to tea next week, you say carefully. She's been unwell. Your husband frowns. I've heard concerning things about the Russells. He mentioned that she's been reading some rather inappropriate materials, feminist nonsense about rational dress or some such. Your heart beats faster. Has he somehow discovered your own interest in the movement? You keep your expression neutral. How shocking, you murmur. I had no idea. Best to limit your association with her, I think. We don't need those sorts of radical ideas in our household. You nod again, the perfect obedient wife, while internally calculating how you might still communicate with Lady Russell without your husband's knowledge. The ladies' charitable committee, perhaps? He never pays attention to those womanly activities. I believe I'll retire early, you say. Tomorrow will be quite demanding. He waves a dismissive hand already buried in his newspaper. Your domestic labours are invisible to him, both the physical toll and the mental load. He sees only the results: a well-managed home, an attractively presented wife, a social reputation that benefits his business interests. Agnes helps you prepare for bed, a process almost as involved as dressing. Each hairpin must be carefully removed to preserve tomorrow's hairstyle. Your face must be cleaned of powders and paints. Your corset finally can be loosened. The relief is immediate and almost painful in itself. Blood rushing back to compressed areas, organs shifting tentatively back toward their natural positions. You take a deep breath, your first full inhalation since morning. Will that be all, ma'am? Agnes asks, folding your discarded clothing. Yes, thank you, Agnes. You pause, then add, could you perhaps find more of those pamphlets? Lady Russell isn't the only one who might be interested. Agnes smiles slightly. I believe I could, ma'am. My cousin knows a lady who attends their meetings. Another small conspiracy, another tiny rebellion. Not enough to change your life today, but perhaps enough to plant seeds for tomorrow. Alone in your bed, you rub the raw marks on your ribs where the corset has dug into your flesh all day. Tomorrow you'll do it all again. The physical restrictions, the household management, the performance of perfect Victorian womanhood. But tonight, in these precious hours of relative freedom, you imagine a different world. One where women can breathe freely, move comfortably, and exist as full human beings rather than decorative angels of the house. It seems impossible, but then all change begins as an impossible dream. Morning arrives too soon. Your body aches from yesterday's constriction, but there's no time for recovery. Today brings the Henderson dinner, a social obligation that could advance your husband's business interests or damage them, depending on your performance as hostess. Agnes arrives with a cup of weak tea. All your compressed stomach can handle this early. "We'll need to start earlier with the corset today, Mom," she reminds you. "The blue silk requires a smaller waist." You nod, dreading what's to come. The blue silk dress was made when you were younger, before 2 pregnancies had changed your body. Achieving the necessary silhouette will require extreme measures. "There's something else, ma'am," Agnes says hesitantly. "I've heard the Henderson ladies have adopted some new fashion from Paris, something called a health corset." Health corset? You're immediately interested. What makes it healthier? It's cut differently, ma'am. Supports from the shoulders rather than just squeezing the waist. Ladies say they can breathe better in it. A corset that allows breathing. What a revolutionary concept. "Do you think we could find one before tonight?" Agnes shakes her head regretfully. "Not in time, ma'am, but I've made some inquiries for the future." This small act of initiative from your lady's maid touches you. Agnes is becoming an ally in your quiet rebellion against the more dangerous aspects of fashion. "Thank you, Agnes. Now let's get this torture device on, shall we? Today's corseting is worse than usual." Agnes has to brace her foot against your dressing table for leverage as she pulls the laces. You grip the bedpost so hard your knuckles turn white. "I can't," you gasp at one point, spots dancing before your eyes. "It's too tight." "Just a bit more, ma'am," Agnes encourages. "We're almost there." The final pull brings tears to your eyes. Your waist is now impossibly small, your breathing reduced to shallow pants. You feel lightheaded already, and the day has barely begun. 19 inches, Agnes announces with professional satisfaction. Smaller than last time you wore the blue silk. You try to feel proud of this achievement, as society expects. Instead, you feel dizzy and slightly nauseated. The pain will subside, Agnes assures you, though both of you know this isn't entirely true. The pain merely evolves from sharp and immediate to dull and chronic. Your body screaming its protest in whatever way it can. Once dressed, you force yourself to eat a few bites of toast, though there's hardly room in your compressed stomach. You'll need some sustenance to get through the day of preparations ahead. In the drawing room, you find your 2 daughters with their governess. Eleanor, 14, is already wearing a training corset, less restrictive than an adult's, but designed to gradually mould her growing body into the desired shape. Emma, just 7, still enjoys the freedom of childhood clothing, though in a few short years she too will begin the process of physical restriction. "Mother, you look beautiful," Eleanor says dutifully, having already learned the expected compliments. "Thank you, dear." You study your older daughter, noticing how she sits perfectly straight, never leaning back against the chair. Her training corset doesn't allow it. Already she's learning that comfort must be sacrificed for appearance. Later that morning, you visit the milliner to collect your new hat for church on Sunday. The fashionable creation sits like a small garden on your head, complete with silk flowers, stuffed birds and decorative feathers. The latest style from Paris, the milliner assures you, adjusting the angle. The birds are particularly fine, genuine hummingbirds from South America. You study your reflection, admiring the craftsmanship while trying to ignore what it represents. Entire species of birds are being hunted to near extinction for ladies' hats. Some estimates suggest that 50 million birds are killed annually for the millinery trade. It's an environmental catastrophe disguised as fashion. And these? You point to the foot-long hat pins needed to secure this creation to your hair. Stainless steel with pearl tops, the milliner says proudly, strong enough to hold the hat in any weather. You don't mention the news story you read recently. A woman whose hatpin accidentally stabbed a man on a crowded omnibus, causing a serious injury. Some cities have begun passing ordinances limiting hatpin length or requiring protective tips, but fashion resists these safety measures. And will you be wanting the matching parasol, ma'am? The milliner asks hopefully. You decline. One dangerous fashion accessory is enough for today. Back home, preparations for the Henderson dinner are in full swing. The house smells of beeswax polish and cooking, and servants hurry about with last-minute tasks. You supervise it all while fighting the discomfort of your too-tight corset, which seems to grow worse as the day progresses. By mid-afternoon, you retreat to your bedroom for a brief rest, a necessary concession to your physical state. Lying down in a tightly laced corset is its own special form of torture, so you recline carefully on a chaise lounge, propped up by pillows. Agnes enters with a concerned expression. The mistress next door sent this over, ma'am. Thought you might want to see it. She hands you a newspaper clipping about a young woman who died after a dancing party. The coroner's report cited tight lacing as a contributing factor. Her waist had been compressed to 17 inches, causing her organs to be dangerously displaced. During the exertion of dancing, she collapsed and could not be revived. 17 inches, you murmur, thinking of the women you know who achieve even smaller measurements. And still women continue the practice. It's expected, isn't it? Agnes says simply. No one wants to be the first to stop. The door opens again, and your younger daughter Emma runs in, then stops abruptly at the sight of you in your formal dress. Mamma, why do you look so different? She asks with childish directness. You smile. It's a special dress for important guests. But your middle looks wrong. Emma frowns. Are you sick? Out of the mouths of babes. You exchange glances with Agnes. How do you explain to a child that yes, you are making yourself sick, compressing your organs, restricting your breathing, risking your health, all for the sake of a silhouette deemed attractive by society? It's just fashion, darling, you say finally. When you're older, you'll understand. But you hope she won't understand. You hope that by the time Emma is grown, the fashions will have changed, that she'll never know the pain of tight lacing or the danger of lead-based face powder. Emma seems unconvinced, but accepts your answer for now. After she leaves, Agnes helps you to your feet. Time to finish dressing, ma'am. The Hendersons will arrive in 2 hours. The final preparations are torturous. Your hair must be styled elaborately, requiring you to sit perfectly still while Agnes works with hot curling tongs. Each movement sends pain through your compressed torso. Your face must be painted to achieve the fashionable pallor. Belladonna drops sting your eyes but create the desired dilated pupils. By the time you're fully dressed, you can barely breathe. The weight of your clothing, corset, petticoats, bustle, dress, comes to nearly 15 pounds, all hanging from your constricted waist. Moving requires careful calculation. Sitting must be done precisely, perching rather than truly resting. You look perfect, ma'am, Agnes assures you, standing back to admire her work. Perfect, but at what cost? Your ribs throb where the corset has shifted them. Your lungs can only partially inflate. Your internal organs are compressed into unnatural positions. Even your skin burns from the chemicals meant to whiten it. The first warning sign comes as you descend the stairs to greet your husband. A wave of dizziness hits, causing you to grip the banister. Your vision tunnels briefly, the edges going dark. "Are you well?" your husband asks, noticing your pause. "Just a moment of light-headedness," you assure him with a practiced smile. "It's past now." He frowns slightly. "You can't afford to be ill tonight. The Hendersons are crucial connections. Not concern for your health, but for the social impression you'll make." You swallow your resentment and nod agreeably. "I'm perfectly fine," you lie. "Just excited for the evening." The Hendersons arrive precisely on time. Mr. Henderson, a business associate of your husband, Mrs. Henderson, a social climber of renowned determination, and their 2 daughters, both of marriageable age and corseted to painful perfection. "My dear, you look wonderful," Mrs. Henderson gushes, air kissing your cheeks. "That shade of blue is so becoming." "As does your gown," you reply automatically. "Is that the new Worth design from Paris?" She preens. "Indeed it is. Frederick insisted, though the cost was shocking. This is the expected exchange. Compliments, subtle boasting about expenditure, the performance of femininity, all while both of you struggle to breathe in your fashionable cages." Dinner proceeds according to rigid Victorian protocol. The men discuss business and politics. The women maintain pleasant, empty conversation about fashion, children, and household matters. The younger Henderson girl, Clara, seems particularly uncomfortable, shifting constantly in her seat. "Are you well, Miss Clara?" you ask quietly during a lull in conversation. She blushes. "Quite well, thank you. Just a new corset. Mother insisted I needed a smaller waist before the season begins." You recognize the signs, the pallor beneath her rouge, the shallow breathing, the way she barely touches her food. Clara has been laced too tightly, probably for the first time. You remember your own introduction to extreme corseting, the days of nausea and dizziness until your body surrendered to its new shape. "Perhaps some air would help," you suggest. "We could step onto the terrace for a moment." Mrs. Henderson frowns. Clara is perfectly fine, just a bit of maidenly excitement about her upcoming debut. The message is clear. No acknowledgement of physical distress is permitted. The polite fiction must be maintained. Women do not suffer for beauty. They achieve it effortlessly. As dessert is served, you notice Clara's face growing paler. Her breathing becomes more rapid, her movements more rigid, classic signs of what doctors call corset syndrome, the body rebelling against its unnatural confinement. Before you can intervene, Clara suddenly gasps, her face now ghostly white. She attempts to stand, then crumples to the floor in a dead faint. The table erupts in controlled chaos. Mrs. Henderson fusses ineffectually. Mr. Henderson looks annoyed at the interruption. Your husband signals for servants to assist. "Loosen her stays," you instruct the maids who rush to help. Quickly, Mrs. Henderson looks scandalized. "In mixed company? Surely not. Would you prefer she suffocate?" you ask sharply, your own discomfort making you less diplomatic than usual. The men retreat to the drawing room while you and Mrs. Henderson oversee Clara's recovery. Once her corset is loosened, revealing angry red welts where the boning has dug into her flesh, she begins to revive. "I'm so sorry," Clara whispers, tears of embarrassment in her eyes. "Nonsense," her mother says briskly. "Just a momentary weakness. Once you're used to proper lacing, these episodes will pass." You meet Clara's eyes and see the hopelessness there. This is her future, years of gradual physical damage in pursuit of the ideal silhouette, just as it has been yours. When the ladies rejoin the gentlemen for coffee, Clara's corset has been retightened, though not quite to its previous extreme. She moves carefully, like someone recovering from an injury, which, in a sense, she is. All resolved? Your husband asks pleasantly, as if a young woman hadn't just collapsed from socially mandated body modification. Completely, Mrs. Henderson assures him, just youthful delicacy. The rest of the evening passes without incident, though you notice Clara barely speaks. Her focus is entirely on maintaining her composure while fighting the restrictions of her clothing. As you bid the Hendersons goodbye at the end of the evening, you press a small card into Clara's hand. On it, you've written the name of a dressmaker who secretly creates less restrictive corsets, one Agnes discovered through her growing network of fashion rebels. Clara glances at it, then quickly tucks it into her glove, giving you a grateful look. Another small act of rebellion. Another potential ally in the quiet revolution. After the guests leave, your husband pronounces the evening a success. Henderson seemed impressed. I think we can expect an invitation to partner in the new venture. You nod, too exhausted to speak much. Your body screams for release from its constraints. Every breath is a struggle. You've been corseted for nearly 14 hours now, and the physical toll is mounting. You did well, he adds, which from him is high praise. Though I noticed you seemed rather concerned about the Henderson girl. No need to make such a fuss over a simple fainting spell. Women are naturally delicate creatures. You bite back the response that women aren't naturally delicate at all. They're made delicate by practices like tight lacing. Instead, you smile and agree, playing your expected role until the end of the evening. Finally, blessedly, you can retreat to your bedroom. Agnes helps you undress, carefully unlacing the corset that has been your prison all day. "Oh, ma'am," she says softly, seeing the deep red grooves and bruised skin beneath. "This is worse than usual. The price of a 19-inch waist," you say with grim humour. "Help me to bed, please." As Agnes assists you, you catch sight of yourself in the mirror, your torso temporarily deformed by hours of compression, the natural curves of your body replaced by an artificial shape dictated by fashion. "Do you think it will ever change, Agnes?" you ask, wincing as you settle into bed. "This tyranny of fashion?" Agnes considers this as she prepares your nightclothes. "My grandmother wore stays all her life, but nothing like what ladies wear now. And my mother says when she was a girl, the fashions were looser. Things do change, Ma'am. Perhaps they'll change again." "I hope so," you murmur, thinking of your daughters, especially young Emma, still free but destined for the same constraints. For their sakes, if not for ours. Agnes extinguishes the lamps, leaving you in darkness. Your body gradually relaxes, organs slowly shifting back toward their natural positions. The relief is exquisite yet painful, like blood returning to a limb that's fallen asleep. In the darkness, you make a decision. Tomorrow, you'll write to that address Agnes found, the meeting place of the Rational Dress Society. You'll make inquiries about healthier corset designs. Small steps, perhaps, but steps nonetheless. You drift towards sleep, imagining a world where women can breathe freely, move naturally, exist comfortably in their own bodies. A world where beauty doesn't require slow self-destruction. It seems an impossible dream, particularly in this rigid Victorian society. But then, all change begins with an impossible dream. Weeks pass, each day bringing the same routine of constraint, both physical and social. But beneath the surface, small changes are brewing. Agnes has become your willing conspirator, bringing pamphlets and whispered information about the growing movement for dress reform. You've made cautious inquiries through the Ladies' Charitable Committee, finding other women who share your quiet discontent with fashion's more dangerous demands. Today, an envelope arrives addressed in unfamiliar handwriting. Your husband is at his club, so you open it without hesitation. The Rational Dress Society welcomes inquiries from ladies concerned with health and comfort in women's attire, meeting Thursday next, 3 o'clock, Mrs. Wilberforce's residence. An address in Bloomsbury follows, a respectable but progressive neighbourhood. This is it. Your first opportunity to connect directly with the movement you've been secretly following. Agnes, you call, trying to contain your excitement. Please check my social calendar for Thursday afternoon. Agnes appears, a knowing look in her eyes. You're free until dinner, Mum. Shall I arrange the carriage? Yes, but discreetly. I'll tell my husband I'm attending the hospital charity committee. This small deception feels justified. Your husband, like most Victorian men, would never understand why his wife would want to associate with those radical women who challenge fashion's dictates. Thursday arrives with agonizing slowness. You dress more simply than usual, selecting your least restrictive corset, still uncomfortable by modern standards, but positively liberating compared to your formal stays. How do I look? You ask Agnes nervously. Not too conventional, I hope, but not scandalously bohemian either. Agnes studies you with an appraising eye. Respectable but open-minded, ma'am. Perfect for a first meeting. The journey to Bloomsbury feels like an adventure, though you're merely travelling across London. Your heart races with a combination of excitement and anxiety. What if someone recognises you? What if word gets back to your husband? What if these women are truly the dangerous radicals that society portrays them to be? Mrs. Wilberforce's home appears perfectly ordinary from the outside, a handsome townhouse with lace curtains and polished brass. No hint that inside, revolutionary ideas about women's clothing are being discussed. A maid shows you to a drawing room where about 15 women have gathered. They range in age from young debutantes to grandmothers, and in class from what appear to be shop assistants to ladies of considerable means. What unites them is a shared interest in freeing women's bodies from fashion's most dangerous demands. "Welcome," says a stately woman who introduces herself as Lady Harberton, one of the society's founders. "We're always pleased to see new faces." You murmur your name, relieved when it elicits no particular reaction. Your social circle hasn't extended to these progressive women before. "Please, sit down," Lady Harberton indicates. "We were just discussing the rational dress exhibition planned for next month." You take a seat, noticing immediately that many of the women are sitting differently than in your usual social gatherings. They lean back comfortably, they cross their legs, they move with a freedom that suggests less restrictive undergarments. "Our new friend might appreciate seeing some examples of rational dress," suggests a younger woman. "Constance, would you do the honours?" A striking woman with intelligent eyes stands and moves to a side room. She returns carrying several garments which she lays out on a table. "I'm Constance Wilde," she introduces herself, and you recognise the name with a start. The wife of Oscar Wilde, the famous writer and aesthete. These are examples of what we consider more rational alternatives to current fashion. She holds up the first item, a corset unlike any you've seen before. "This is what we call a health corset," Constance explains. "Note how it supports from the shoulders rather than compressing the waist. It allows for natural breathing and movement while still providing the structure that many women feel they need." You examine it with interest, noting the practical design. It would still shape the figure, but without the extreme compression that makes traditional corsets so dangerous. And this, she continues, is perhaps our most controversial item, the divided skirt. She holds up what appears at first glance to be an ordinary skirt, but upon closer examination reveals itself to be very wide-legged trousers disguised as a skirt. For cycling, walking and general freedom of movement, Constance explains. All the modesty of a skirt with the practicality of trousers. A murmur runs through the room. Even in this progressive gathering, the idea of women wearing anything resembling trousers is shocking to some. I wore a similar garment to a restaurant last month, Lady Harberton says, with a mischievous smile. They refused to serve me in the ladies' dining room. Said I wasn't properly dressed, can you imagine? 15 yards of fabric covering every inch of my legs, and I was considered improperly dressed. Laughter ripples through the group. There's a camaraderie here, a shared understanding of fashion's absurdities that you've never experienced in your usual social circles. What brings you to us today? Lady Harberton asks you directly. Most women find us through some personal crisis with conventional fashion. All eyes turn to you, curious but supportive. You take a deep breath, easier in your less restrictive corset, and find yourself sharing the story of Clara Henderson's fainting spell, your own daily discomfort, and your concern for your daughter's future. I don't want Emma to grow up thinking she must torture herself to be acceptable, you finish. But I don't know how to change things for her when the entire society enforces these standards. Nods of understanding greet your words. Many of these women have daughters or nieces of their own. That's why we exist, Constance Wilde says gently. Not to force change overnight, but to create alternatives, to educate and to support each other in making healthier choices. May I see the health corset again? You ask. I'd be interested in trying one. For the next hour, you're introduced to a world of alternative fashion you never knew existed. Lightweight fabrics that don't require heavy petticoats, boots designed for walking rather than just appearance, hats that can be secured without dangerous hat pins. Most importantly, you're surrounded by women who question the status quo, who prioritise health and comfort alongside appearance, who believe women deserve better than slow self-destruction in the name of beauty. We're not suggesting women abandon beauty, Lady Harberton explains as tea is served. We're simply advocating for a beauty that doesn't compromise health. My husband designs aesthetically pleasing clothing that doesn't torture the wearer, Constance adds with a smile. Oscar believes beauty should never require suffering. You think of your blue silk dress requiring that punishing 19-inch waist. Could there truly be beautiful clothing that allows for natural breathing, comfortable movement, healthy internal organs? As the meeting continues, practical matters are discussed. How to order healthier clothing options discreetly. How to introduce rational dress ideas to skeptical friends and family. How to handle social criticism when making even small changes to conventional dress. Many of us begin with underwear, an older woman advises, a less restrictive corset, more reasonable petticoats, things that improve comfort without creating social scandal. This approach appeals to you. You're not ready to wear divided skirts in public, but you could certainly adopt a healthier corset for everyday wear. By the time the meeting ends, you've ordered a health corset, subscribed to the Rational Dress Society's discreet newsletter, and made connections with several women who live near enough to maintain regular contact. Will we see you at next month's meeting? Lady Harberton asks, as you prepare to leave. We'll be discussing rational dress for young girls, perhaps relevant for your daughter. Yes, you decide. I'll be here. The journey home feels different. You sit more comfortably in the carriage, already imagining how much better you'll feel in a less restrictive corset. For the first time in years, you feel a sense of hope, not just for yourself, but for Emma and her generation. Agnes is waiting when you return, eager for details. You share everything in the privacy of your dressing room, watching her face light up at the possibilities. "Do you think they make such corsets for ladies' maids?" she asks, hopefully. "I'll inquire, you promise, or perhaps have one made for you when mine arrives." This conspiracy between you deepens your bond. No longer merely mistress and servant, you're allies in a quiet rebellion against fashion's most harmful demands. Your husband notices nothing different when he returns home. You play your role perfectly, the attentive wife, the accomplished hostess, the social asset. But beneath the perfect exterior, something has changed. You've found your voice, connected with like-minded women, taken your first small step toward freedom. 2 weeks later, a plain package arrives. Agnes brings it to your dressing room with barely contained excitement. "Is it the health corset?" you confirm, unwrapping it carefully. "Let's try it immediately." The difference is remarkable. The new corset still provides structure and some shaping, but it distributes pressure more evenly, supports from the shoulders, and allows your lungs to fully expand. For the first time in years, you can take a deep breath while dressed. "How does it feel, ma'am?" Agnes asks as she helps you dress. "Like freedom," you say simply. Your day unfolds with unprecedented ease. You can bend to pick up a dropped handkerchief. You can climb stairs without stopping to catch your breath. You can eat a normal meal without discomfort. Small freedoms, but revolutionary in their impact on your daily life. That evening, you attend a dinner party wearing your new corset beneath a high-necked evening gown. No one notices any difference in your appearance, but you notice the difference in how you feel. Alert rather than lightheaded, comfortable rather than in constant pain. Lady Russell is among the guests, and you find a moment to speak privately with her. "You look well," she comments. "There's a new energy about you." "I've been making some changes," you say carefully. "Have you heard of the Rational Dress Society?" Her eyes widen slightly. "I have their pamphlets. Are you—" "I attended a meeting. It was illuminating. This shared secret creates an immediate bond. For the rest of the evening, you and Lady Russell exchange glances whenever the conversation touches on fashion or women's health. Conspirators in a gentle revolution. Over the following months, you make additional small changes. You order walking boots with sensible heels. You gradually reduce the weight of your petticoats. You forget to use belladonna eye drops when not attending important social functions. None of these changes draw particular notice. Your husband, focused on his business and social climbing, hardly registers the subtle evolution in your appearance. As long as you present appropriately at important functions, he has little interest in your daily dress. Your daughters, however, do notice. 14-year-old Eleanor watches you curiously as you move more freely, breathe more easily, seem more comfortable in your own body. "Mother, is your corset different?" she asks one afternoon while you're arranging flowers together. You pause, considering how to respond. This could be a crucial moment in your daughter's life. "Yes," you say simply. "I've found a healthier design that's still quite proper. Would you like to see it?" Eleanor's eyes light up. "Could I have one? My training corset pinches terribly." "I think that could be arranged," you say, your heart swelling with hope. Perhaps Eleanor can avoid the years of discomfort and health problems you've endured. 7-year-old Emma, still blissfully uncorseted, notices even more dramatic changes in her mother. "You can pick me up again?" she exclaims one day when you spontaneously lift her in a hug. "You said your dress wouldn't let you before." "I have better dresses now," you explain, twirling her around in a moment of uncharacteristic playfulness. "Dresses that let me move and breathe and hug my favourite daughters." These small freedoms, breathing, moving, hugging your children, remind you how much has been sacrificed on the altar of fashion, how many moments of joy have been constrained by whalebone and steel, by social expectations and beauty standards that prioritize appearance over health. You continue attending Rational Dress Society meetings, now bringing Eleanor occasionally. The network of like-minded women grows, sharing information, supporting each other's small rebellions, creating a community of resistance against fashion's most harmful dictates. Not every experiment is successful. You try a walking skirt shortened to ankle length for a country ramble and face such shocked stares from neighbours that you retreat to conventional length afterward. You attempt to wear a lighter corset to church only to receive cutting remarks from your mother about letting yourself go. Change comes slowly, with setbacks and compromises, but it comes. The most dramatic moment arrives unexpectedly during a summer visit to your sister's country home. Away from the rigid social scrutiny of London, your sister has adopted some surprisingly progressive ideas. "I've taken up bicycling," she announces one morning at breakfast. "The doctor recommended it for my health, and I've found it wonderfully invigorating." Your husband and brother-in-law exchange sceptical glances. Bicycling is still controversial for women, though becoming more accepted among the more progressive set. "But how do you manage in skirts?" you ask, genuinely curious. Your sister's eyes twinkle. "Come to my room after breakfast, I'll show you." Upstairs, she closes the door and dramatically pulls a garment from her wardrobe, a bicycling outfit with divided skirts, very similar to what you saw at the Rational Dress meeting. "Helen, you didn't." "I did," she says defiantly, "and it's marvellous. No tangled fabric in the wheels, no dangerous falls, no immodest exposure when mounting or dismounting, just practical, sensible, comfortable cycling." "But what does Edward say?" you ask, referring to your brother-in-law. "He was horrified at first," she admits. "But when Dr. Matthews prescribed regular exercise for my nerves, Edward had to concede. Now he barely notices. Would you like to try it?" You hesitate. This goes beyond a slightly less restrictive corset or lighter petticoats. This is a visible public deviation from conventional feminine dress. Are you ready for such a step? Yes, you decide. Surprising yourself, I would. An hour later, dressed in borrowed cycling clothes and a health corset, you experience a freedom of movement you haven't known since childhood. The divided skirt allows you to stride naturally, to mount the bicycle without struggle, to pedal without restriction. You and Helen cycle down country lanes, laughing with the sheer joy of physical freedom. The summer air on your face, the ability to breathe deeply, the natural movement of your body. It's intoxicating. "This is how we're meant to feel," Helen calls over her shoulder. "Not trapped in fabric cages." You can only nod, too overwhelmed with sensation to speak. This is what you've been missing. Not just comfort, but joy in movement, connection with your physical self, the simple human pleasure of a body moving as nature intended. Later, returning to the house, you encounter your husband walking on the lawn. His expression freezes in shock at the sight of you in divided skirts, cheeks flushed from exercise, hair slightly dishevelled from the summer breeze. "Margaret," he says stiffly, "what on earth are you wearing?" For a moment, old habits of deference surface. You nearly stammer an apology, a justification, a promise not to do it again. But something has changed within you. These months of small rebellions, of connection with like-minded women, of gradually reclaiming your physical freedom, they've awakened something long dormant. Cycling clothes, you say simply. Recommended by Dr. Matthews for Helen's health. I found the exercise quite invigorating. He frowns, clearly displeased but unsure how to respond to this calm assertion. Medical advice provides a shield he's reluctant to challenge directly. You look unsuitable, he finally says. I trust this is a country experiment only. Of course, you agree smoothly. Just a bit of healthful exercise away from London eyes. This compromise, freedom in private, conformity in public, is one many women of your generation will make. Not a complete revolution, but a step toward it. Not freedom for all women, but small expansions of possibility that future generations can build upon. That evening, changing for dinner with Agnes's help, you reflect on the day's experience. I felt alive, Agnes, you try to explain. Not just comfortable or pain-free, but truly alive in my body. Agnes smiles. That's how people are meant to feel, Mum, not tortured by their clothing. As she helps you into an evening gown, still conventional enough to satisfy social expectations, but worn over your health corset, you think of your daughters, Eleanor, who may have more choices than you had, Emma, who might grow up in a world where women's health matters more than waist measurements. Change comes slowly, then all at once. You're living in the slow part, the quiet questioning, the small rebellions, the gradual shifts in what women will accept. But you can see the future on the horizon, a future where beauty doesn't require suffering, where fashion serves women rather than constraining them, where your daughters can breathe freely and move naturally through the world. It seems less impossible now, because all change begins with an impossible dream nurtured by brave hearts and stubborn minds. Years pass. The calendar turns to a new century. Queen Victoria dies in January 1901, and her son, Edward VII, assumes the throne. The Victorian era ends, giving way to the Edwardian period, a time of transition, of shifting social norms, of emerging modernity. You've changed with the times, in your own careful way. Your corsets are now the healthier variety, still maintaining a proper silhouette but allowing for natural breathing and movement. Your skirts have risen to ankle length for walking and daily activities. You've even, on special country occasions, borrowed Helen's cycling costume for private afternoon rides. Your daughters have benefited from your quiet rebellion. Eleanor, now 21 and recently married, has never known the extreme restriction of a 19-inch waist. Emma, 14, wears the minimal corsetry required for propriety, but nothing that impedes her natural development or restricts her breathing. But the world is changing in ways beyond fashion. New technologies are entering the home, promising to revolutionize domestic life, bringing both convenience and unexpected dangers. The most marvellous invention, your friend Lady Russell tells you during an afternoon visit. Electric lighting throughout the house. No more dangerous gas flames, no more smoky oil lamps. Just clean, instant light at the touch of a switch. You're intrigued. Your own home still uses gas lighting with all its attendant risks of explosion, fire and toxic fumes. Electric lighting sounds like a miracle. Henry is considering it, you admit, though he worries about the cost and reliability. Frederick was concerned too, Lady Russell says, referring to her husband. But after Mrs. Henderson's curtains caught fire from a gas lamp, he decided electricity was the safer option. Safety is the great selling point of this new technology. Newspapers are full of stories about gas explosions, lamp accidents, and homes burning down. Electric lighting, proponents claim, eliminates these dangers. What the enthusiastic advertisements don't mention are the new dangers electricity brings, dangers few understand in these early days of domestic electrification. You discover this firsthand when your husband finally agrees to have the house wired for electricity. Workers arrive, drilling holes, running wires, installing strange new fixtures. The process is disruptive and expensive, but the promise of modern convenience seems worth it. "The future, my dear," Henry says proudly when the installation is complete. "No progressive household can be without electricity now. The electric lights are indeed miraculous. Clear, steady illumination without heat, smoke, or odour. You're particularly relieved to have them in the nursery, where Emma's reading habit had always made you nervous with oil lamps near bedding." But the lights are just the beginning. Once electricity enters the home, a flood of new appliances follows, each promising to modernise housework and improve domestic life. The first is an electric kettle, a modern marvel that boils water without a stove or flame. Agnes is delighted with it, exclaiming over the time saved in morning tea preparation. "Be careful with the cord," the salesman had warned when delivering it. "Keep it away from water and don't let it fray." You're diligent about these precautions, but not everyone understands the dangers. You hear about Mrs. Chamberlain's maid, who received a nasty shock when using their electric kettle with wet hands. She survived, but the incident reveals how little people understand about this powerful new force they've invited into their homes. Next comes an electric iron, heavier than traditional flat irons, but more consistent in temperature and requiring no heating on the stove. "Mind you don't leave it facing down," Agnes cautions the housemaids. Mrs. Littleton's iron burned right through her ironing board and started a fire when her maid was called away. The convenience of these devices is undeniable, but they bring new risks that weren't present with older technologies. Traditional dangers were visible and understood. Fire burns, gas smells before it explodes. Steam is visibly hot. Electricity's dangers are invisible, silent, and poorly understood. The most dramatic illustration of this comes with your newest acquisition, an electric refrigerator, replacing the traditional icebox in the kitchen. No more ice deliveries, no more melting and dripping, the salesman enthuses. Constant cold temperature for safer food storage. What he doesn't emphasise is that early refrigerators used toxic gases like ammonia or methyl chloride as refrigerants. If these leak, which they often do, they can cause respiratory distress, skin burns, or even death. You learn this when Cook comes running upstairs one afternoon, face pale with fear. "Ma'am, there's a terrible smell from that new ice chest, and the kitchen maid's taken ill." You rush downstairs to find the kitchen maid, young Sally, slumped in a chair, breathing in shallow gasps. The air in the kitchen has a strange, acrid quality that burns your throat. "Open all the windows," you command the hovering staff, "and someone fetch Dr. Matthews immediately." Sally recovers with fresh air and rest, but the incident leaves everyone